in the heart of West Africa, behind the public statements and carefully worded communiques, a quieter tension brews, one that could define the future of an entire region. The Economic Community of West African States, ECOWAS, finds itself at a crossroads, grappling with a new kind of leadership it neither understands nor fully controls. At the center of this unfolding drama stands Captain Ibrahim Traore, the young military leader of Burkina Faso, whose rise has sent tremors through the foundations of West African diplomacy. Traore is not your typical coup leader. At just 36, he embodies something different, a sharp, ideologically charged figure who speaks the language of African independence, of defiance against foreign meddling, and of deep-rooted frustration with a regional order many feel has failed them. He didn't come to power promising to blend into the old systems. He came to break them, and ECOWAS knows this. Since taking power in September 2022, Traoré has defied nearly every expectation. His speeches are bold, sometimes incendiary, calling out not just colonial legacies, but the African institutions that, in his eyes, serve them. He expelled French forces, refused to bow to ECOWAS's demands for a transition, and joined hand with Mali and Niger in forming the Alliance of Sahel States, an unprecedented security pact that's part military alliance, part ideological brotherhood. These moves haven't just unsettled the West, they've unsettled ECOWAS. This is not a rebellion on the fringe. This is a coordinated shift of power and legitimacy away from the bloc center toward a new axis rooted in popular resentment, anti-imperialist rhetoric, and military rule. For ECOWAS, this is dangerous territory. Officially, ECOWAS condemned the coup, called for the restoration of constitutional order, and demanded a timeline for democratic transition. But compared to their swift and punishing response to Niger's military takeover, their actions toward Burkina Faso have been restrained. No sweeping sanctions, no border closures, no military threats. Why? Some observers believe ECOWAS is playing a different game with Traoré. They're not confronting him head-on, but rather waiting, letting time and internal pressure do the work. It's a strategy of passive resistance, a bet that his popularity will wane, that economic hardship or political missteps will chip away at his grip on power. But it's a dangerous bet, because Traoré isn't just holding on, he's gaining ground in Burkina Faso and increasingly across the Sahel. He's seen not as a tyrant, but as a liberator. To many, he represents a break from decades of dependency on France, on international aid, and on the worn-out promises of regional bodies like ECOWAS. His refusal to back down has turned him into a folk hero of sorts, especially among the youth who see in him a kind of revolutionary energy absent from the traditional political class. Meanwhile, ECOWAS's credibility continues to erode. Once praised as a model for African cooperation, the bloc now faces accusations of bias, double standards, and foreign influence. Critics argue that ECOWAS too often acts as an enforcer for Western interests, especially France's, rather than a defender of African sovereignty. The failure to act consistently, the selective enforcement of rules, and the perceived disconnect from everyday citizens have created a crisis of legitimacy. In that vacuum, Traoré and his allies are offering an alternative vision. It's important to understand the deeper context here. ECOWAS is not a monolith. Within the bloc, member states have diverging interests, domestic pressures, and foreign allegiances. Nigeria, the economic heavyweight, is itself under pressure from economic decline, internal insecurity, and a complex political landscape. President Bola Tinubu must manage Nigeria's leadership role in ECOWAS carefully, knowing that too aggressive a stance could backfire domestically. Other ECOWAS members like Ghana, Senegal, and Côte d'Ivoire are also watching Traoré closely, not just out of concern for Burkina Faso, but out of fear. Fear that his defiance might inspire similar movements in their own borders. Fear that the legitimacy of civilian governments, already fragile in many parts of the region, might be undermined by the Sahel's new political wave. This is what makes Traoré such a disruptive figure. He's not just governing a country. He's reshaping an idea, the idea of African leadership. And while ECOWAS may not admit it openly, This idea threatens them more than any military coup ever could. And so we return to the question, does ECOWAS secretly want Traoré gone? Perhaps not through direct confrontation. Perhaps not through sanctions or ultimatums, but through pressure, through quiet isolation, through diplomatic containment. Let him fail, the thinking might go, and then move in when the people are ready for something else. But what if that plan doesn't work? What if Traoré doesn't fail? What if, instead, he continues to galvanize support, deepen regional alliances, and redefine West Africa's geopolitical orientation? What if his model spreads, if not in form, then in spirit? In that case, ECOWAS's current posture becomes untenable. They will either have to adapt or risk becoming irrelevant in a region that no longer sees them as the solution. And it's easy to frame this moment as a simple battle between democracy and dictatorship. But that framing misses the complexity. This is a battle over what legitimacy looks like in a post-colonial Africa, over who gets to speak for the people, over whether power must always flow through the channels carved out by foreign powers and international norms, or whether it can be seized and redefined by those willing to break the rules. Traoré may not have all the answers. His regime still faces enormous challenges, from insurgent violence to economic strain. His leadership style, while charismatic, may still slide into authoritarianism. And the dream of independence can quickly be corrupted by the realities of governance. But for now, in the eyes of many, he represents a break from a system that has failed them time and time again. ECOWAS is watching, waiting, maybe even hoping. But hoping for what? For a return to order, or for the fall of a leader they can't control? One thing is certain. The old balance is shifting. West Africa is on the edge of something new. And in that space between silence and action, between diplomacy and defiance, the fate of a region is being rewritten by young leaders, bold movements, and a population tired of waiting for change. Whether ECOWAS can rise to meet this moment, or whether it quietly roots for its collapse, may be the most important question facing the region today.